Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hey girl, hey. It's me, Marissa. I am popping on 2 announcements. First announcement, and I can hear my husband. So, with that in mind, the sound. I am working on the sound. I recently got a new laptop, and I assumed that the sound quality would improve. And listening back to recent episodes, I have come to conclude that that is not true. That is not an absolute. New computer does not equal new sound. So I'm working on it, and I truly appreciate your patience. I know I've listened to other podcasts and my listening experience has been impacted by the sound quality. So I have that in mind. I have you in mind. I am working on it. Second announcement, have you signed up for the 30-day self-validation challenge? Go to www.codependdummy.com/challenge to learn to validate yourself. We codependent dummies suck at validating ourselves. codependdummy.com/challenge. I will teach you the practice, process, and art of self-validation. And that is it. I hope that this episode resonates with you. Third announcement, I just remembered. At the end of the show notes, moving forward, I'm going to include questions for reflection in hopes that that deepens the listening experience. So if you, before, during, or after listening, you can scroll to the end of the show notes for questions. Okay, here is Leah. All right, everyone. Today, we have Leah Seafor. She is South Africa's go-to life and relationships expert. She is well known for being a straight-talking, take no prisoners life coach, author, podcaster, and speaker whose work is all about what it means to be real. Leah delivers dynamic coaching experiences, facilitating breakthroughs, and gives men and women the wake-up calls they need to create a non-negotiable life. Your journey to a more authentic life starts with her. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome. So I've asked you here to talk about broken wing syndrome.
Yes.
Before we get to that syndrome I hadn't heard of before I heard about you, can you share with us how you define codependency?
For me, codependency is when there's a mutual need of each other. And whether this is in a platonic relationship, in a romantic relationship, in a way that need can't be filled individually, so you become reliant on the other to fill that. And in an unhealthy way, it actually starts to become mutual manipulation I find, in relationships, that even if there is the giver and the taker, which often is the state of a codependent relationship, both sides still have an unconscious manipulation happening, no matter which side of it they're on. So yeah, I always find that there's never the one victim and the one, doing all the taking. I find that for both people involved in the unhealthy relationship, there is that manipulation that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mutual manipulation.
Mm.
Can you, right, talking about a giver taker, can you provide an example of manipulation on both ends?
I feel a lot of the negativity in terms of looking at codependency gets put on the one, needing to be taken care of,
right.
So the caretaker is the one who's sacrificing all of themselves and giving up their needs to take care of the other. And yet, even in that, the eternal gratitude of the other person, the eternal thank yous for doing everything for me from the other person, becomes the need that caretaker needs to get fulfilled in themselves. It's not always just about the other person. And that needing to create a situation where the giver or the caretaker breaks themselves to give to the other person, to the point of physical illness or mental strain, right, where everybody kind of stops to go, oh, wait, are you okay? Do you need the attention for a little bit? Is everything fine with you? It can in a way become that manipulate the situation to get to see me, pay attention to me, I'm also here. And I'm not saying that the manipulation is malicious or insidious or nasty, but it's creating an unworkable situation to get the attention.
Right.
And I feel that happens from both sides. So, if we talk in traditional terms of the codependency, when there is substance abuse, the focus is always on the one doing the substance abuse, where the caretaker sacrifices everything. But remember, the caretaker likes to be needed. Mm-hmm. The caretaker likes to be wanted in that role, so it serves them in some way for the situation and for the relationship to be in the dynamic that it's in.
Right. That is, I would argue, one of the hardest things for codependents to acknowledge is how our codependency serves us.
Oh, totally.
Like, how could breaking my back and, dating these idiots and, sacrificing so much at work, how could that be serving me? I'm just serving everyone else. And it's like, don't you love that your boss thinks you're the most responsible person? And absolutely, that your boyfriend is so grateful that you picked him up again? Or like, it's
absolutely, you simply do not continue with behaviors unless there is a payoff. There's a payoff, and you're right, it's uncomfortable for people to face that in themselves and to look at that. But if you want to shift a toxic, codependent, unworkable relationship, you are the common denominator in all of your sad relationship stories. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to go, what is my behavior? What is my responsibility in this? Right. What is my responsibility in this?
Right. Not shaming, not blaming, but how am I contributing? Yeah. What's my part?
And what deeper need in me is being served by this behavior? And how could that same need be served in a healthier way? Mm-hmm. Because it's completely unhealthy. You can recognize it's unhealthy, but maybe you've never learned another way. This is how it's always been for you. You've never known how to speak or behave in a more empowered way in your relationships. So, the need to be wanted, you only know how to fulfill that need by being the caretaker. Mm-hmm. But maybe there's another way that you can get that need met. And, that is what the journey of self-discovery is always about.
Right.
Is there another way?
Right. With such a amazing description of codependency, Do you have any experiences from your own life that you can share with us?
Absolutely. I think
So for the listener, right, your eyes just widened like, yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh no, definitely. I think the when I was in it, as with all of us, when you're in it, you don't see it. But I think looking back, the first major relationship in my life was definitely a very unhealthy codependent relationship. And he was a serial cheater.
Mm.
So, the hit for him was like he kept needing me to forgive him, and he kept needing me to come back to him even after he behaved the way he behaved. And because I was in my early 20s, even before then I was probably 19, I didn't have any sense of self-worth at that time. So the fact that he would cheat but then come back to me made me feel worthy. It made me feel, that's how my need got met, of worthiness, is look, he still chose me anyway.
Right.
And that he I always got the hit of him apologizing all the time, and groveling, please, don't give up on me. And that gave me some sense of that power of, okay, he still needs my approval, and he still needs me to like him. And it was this very toxic back and forth kind of, he would cheat and I would feel broken, but then I'd forgive him, and we knew it would happen again. And these toxic behaviors carry on in especially, I find, with a lot of first relationships, because you don't know relationship yet.
Right.
The first big relationship, you have no experience, you have no frame of reference, nothing has come before, you don't have anything to compare it to, and you allow bad behaviors, you allow boundaries to be violated, you allow things to be said that are totally unacceptable, but nobody's taught you how to say no, and nobody's taught you how to say this isn't working. And I think that relationship took me a long time, and I was on my knees by the end of it to finally say, I'm not doing this anymore. Because the other thing is, when you're in that relationship, you genuinely think if you just hold on long enough, they'll change. Just hold on long enough, they'll get better. This time they won't cheat, or this time they will keep their promise. And anyone who's been in any kind of relationship like that knows that that they're never going to change. They will always break the promise, and the behavior will just continue because you keep allowing it, you keep going back. So it took many years of a lot of heartbreak for me to kind of wake up and walk away from that. And it's hard because I feel sorry almost for the second partner that comes along after an experience like that, because when you fought so hard to learn how to say no, the no is hard,
Right.
it's defiant, and it just makes the next person who comes along unable to really access that softer, vulnerable side of you, because the armor is up so powerfully to not get hurt again.
Right.
It takes a few experiences to kind of soften into yourself again, to know that boundaries don't have to be a hard thing. But when you're first learning about boundaries, you get very hard.
Right.
So that was my real relationship experience of codependency, which took a very long time to recover from.
I haven't written an autobiography, but I sense you just wrote a page with my first relationship, all the healing, therapy, meetings, group therapy I went to get support. And yeah, my now husband. And yeah, poor guy. He had to deal with some rigid boundaries, and like, I'm not taking shit from no one like I did last time. Yeah. But yeah, my ex serial cheater needed me to forgive him, totally forgave him. And then my husband, he would be late. And I was like, what is he doing? He would miss my call. Who is he with? Like, I was still years later, the trauma, right? And so just having to, discover that softer part while in a relationship with him. So thankfully he was not the same as the previous guy. But yeah.
I'm sure he wasn't. And I've got to hand it to the guys that hang in there, and I know we're making it very much female male based in terms of the conversation, because this is easily the other way around. I've worked with a lot of men who've had this experience with women, but
right.
I find that with women though, the no has to be so hard to be received that it's we start to believe this is who we have to be if we want to stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because men negotiate the no's. Oh, it'll be fine, don't have to be that way, I promise I didn't mean it. They kind of negotiate with you around where your boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you second guess yourself and think, well, maybe my boundary is a bit ridiculous. Maybe it is a bit too severe. Maybe I do need to tone it down a bit. And so women traditionally have had to become so severe in their no's to be taken seriously, that we've got to start shifting this with younger generations of how do you say no without having to harden yourself?
Right.
And just I had for men to take it at the first word. When a no comes out of a woman's mouth, whatever the situation is, that's where everything stops, right there and then. Mm-hmm. Don't negotiate that. So men have to take huge ownership of how they negotiate the no's, and support women to have that boundary without it needing to be hard. Otherwise, they don't win.
Right.
Otherwise, there's just no access to women after that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yay for your husband who hang in there, and mine, mm-hmm. because it's a journey for men to overcome the trauma of the first relationship. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about broken wing syndrome. What is broken wing syndrome?
So broken wing syndrome is the dynamic of the rescuer and the victim. Mm-hmm. And it's traditionally a man rescuing a woman, so he meets a woman who's just come out of a horrible relationship, or, she's living a life of struggle, or she doesn't have money, or she may be a single parent, and she's in a very vulnerable, position. And the man has that absolute need to want to rescue and take care of. So the problem with that is as well-meaning as it might be from the man's side, and again, I'm being very traditional in saying this is a male-woman dynamic, can be a dynamic in any type of relationship, but I experience it most in a heterosexual relationship where the man wants to rescue, the woman wants to be rescued, mm-hmm. but then this unhealthy dynamic develops where he has to stay the rescuer for the woman to stay interested in him, and she has to stay the victim for the man to stay interested in her. And the minute he maybe has moments of wanting to experience his own vulnerability, or she has moments of wanting to really step into her power, the relationship falls to pieces. Mm-hmm. Because the whole basis of this relationship is around her being broken and him rescuing. But if she doesn't need to be rescued, and he doesn't get to be the rescuer, then what roles do they now occupy in that relationship? And it's a hard one, because when I work with this with couples, men get very frustrated with an ongoing victim story. It's like it's irritating for them. It's like, I wish she would just get over this and realize that she's totally capable and she must go and get a job and she can totally start her own business. And they speak like this of wanting to support their partner, but when she actually steps up and starts doing it, it's a dynamic that's a bit, no, he wasn't prepared for that, and I don't mm-hmm. like it, and now she doesn't need me, and then I don't know what my role in this is anymore. And then the same with her, her saying, he's always so strong for me, but sometimes I wish he'd let me be there for him. And he's always, so capable. And I always feel, like I'm failing. It would be great to see him being a bit vulnerable. But then he shows his vulnerable side. He has an emotional moment. And then she kind of gets turned off and goes, oh, I don't know if I like that side of you. I don't know if that works for me. Actually, it's because my attraction to you was not this. So we have this divide between this intellectual idea of how we think we want to support our partners to be another way, but then when that starts to shift, the heart, the chest stuff, the body stuff, the soul stuff kind of goes, oh, I don't know, this wasn't what I signed. This is what I didn't sign up for this. Right. So this broken wing syndrome is is the minute a woman maybe steps into her power and starts wanting to reclaim a bit of her life, the relationship will end very often. And then she's going to go out and find another broken wing and another broken wing and another broken wing. And that's going to become his patterning with such a ultimate level of resentment that he's not getting, equal fighting weight in his relationship somewhere down the line. So that's the gist of the broken wing syndrome.
Yes. And how do you sense that's compounded by codependency? And how do you sense it's compounded with codependence?
I think the codependency gets deeper and deeper as a result of this.
Right.
He needs her to always stay in that role for him to feel that he can take care of her, but she also likes the fact that maybe she's the only one that gets to see a slightly softer side of him because he's such a powerful, strong, capable man out there in the world. So she likes that she gets to see that secret side to him that nobody else sees. But what happens is especially with the controller, the caretaker, the rescuer, is that they start becoming quite dominating and quite controlling, but they do it in a very passive way. I don't think you should drive at night. It's not safe. Oh, I don't know if those friends are really good for you. They don't make you feel good about yourself. I don't think you should see them. I don't know that your family are really healthy for you. I don't know that you should be going there on weekends. It starts as this very subtle manipulation to dominate and control under the guise of, I'm just looking out for you. I just want to protect you. I don't want to see you hurt again.
Right.
And that unhealthy codependency starts to get worse and worse and worse with that, where she starts to buy it and believe it, but also she can't live without him now because maybe he's financially the bigger earner and she can't financially leave, or maybe she doesn't have a job, maybe she doesn't have somewhere to live. So she allows it, she allows the control to happen in the relationship, and the communication goes downhill because she feels she can't speak up because he's just going to find a clever way to, put that down. And he's, got deeper desires that he feels he can't communicate because he's occupied the rescuer role. And maybe there's stuff going on for him at work or with his own family or his own feelings from his previous relationship that haven't been resolved. And he's dealing with it and working with it because, real men don't go to therapy and real men don't cry. And that toxic, male culture of how men aren't allowed to have any kind of emotion. Well, like, where do you think that emotion goes? So he's still got that churning up inside him, but not communicating it to anybody. And we know that when that emotion is so trapped within the control external gets worse. Because you feel like you're getting out of control and you're just terrified to go there. So the controlling becomes a bit more hard. So the communication goes down the tube, boundaries stop being respected. All that codependent, there's this lack of trusting each other. He doesn't trust whenever she leaves the house, who's she with, where's she going? She feels controlled by him. It's these very typical kind of gameplays that happen with codependency, that just impacts with this broken wing syndrome.
Right. And this dynamic, where do you sense, where does the rescuer role stem from? We'll start with rescuer and then the victim role.
I think both are very much, again, this very patriarchal culture that has gone on for generations and generations of men are raised to be strong and fierce and knight in shining armors and
providers.
Absolutely. Providers, protectors. And women are completely raised as being, vulnerable and incapable and needing protection and a bit clueless about things unless men show us the way. And it is that very toxic way of traditional marriage where the father hands the daughter to the man. It's like, you don't have a choice. You are just, you know, the being sold on to, you know, this agreement.
Right.
So I think we are raised, and I mean, I know this has been spoken about ad nauseum, but I mean, if you really look at all fairy tales, all storybooks as kids, it's all this dynamic of the woman being frail and vulnerable and can't survive unless a man comes to rescue her. But men and boys are raised on this as well. You need to be tough, and you need to be strong, and you need to be capable. And it breaks men. It breaks men being raised in this kind of culture of how do you undo that kind of that severity of no emotion allowed, you know, and women, and we're seeing it now, you know, it's been such a hugely amazing time to be alive over this last, especially this last decade, you know, with the Me Too movement, of seeing women starting to fully reclaim their power and really step into owning their stuff. And it's sad because on the other side of it, so many relationships have fallen apart because men don't know how to live with that. Men don't know how to live with a woman who doesn't need them to protect them. A woman wants to have a relationship with a man, but she doesn't need to have a relationship with a man anymore.
Right.
And that is a massive dynamic that is shifting. So this is a lot of what I deal with the couples I work with, is how are we reframing this new dynamic of healthy relationship that is not based on an archetype of the man being the provider protector and the woman being the nester and the nurturer. So I think that this is where this broken wing syndrome comes into effect, is men just, that's the only way men know how to be needed, is when they're rescuing. You know, and it's the only way that women know to be wanted, is to just like play down their intellect and their power so that men don't feel threatened by it. But I really feel it's changing. I feel it's changing hugely at the moment.
Right. So culturally, right? Yes. Fairy tales, patriarchy.
Yeah.
And also, while you're talking, I've had girlfriends who, yeah, they're slowly ending a relationship. It's just dragging out, and they meet some guy, and the guy is helping them get over the ex.
Yes.
Right. And she's on the phone arguing with her ex, and then she calls her new savior to cry about him, the ex. And yeah, it's just this slow transition into a new relationship. Girlfriends, I've had patients in my therapy practice, and yeah, I'm listening to these young men talk about these women, and I'm like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Like,
run.
She's still in a relationship. She just got out of a relationship. She's getting divorced. No. Yeah. And one thing too, culturally, the framework for that dynamic is there. And also, I do see patterns where maybe mom works from home. Maybe the mom and dad have the same dynamic, and or yeah, they've watched, it is cultural, but like media, they've seen that same narrative in their favorite TV shows. And absolutely. I don't know. Yeah.
It's deep. It's in every sector of society. I don't care what race, what religion, what culture, what age. It is everywhere across the planet. And that is why it is so deeply reinforced. It is that like subconscious psyche of the human race, that these primal blueprints that we occupy, you know, of the man holding this role and the woman holding that role. And I agree with you completely about, you need space between the ending of one relationship and the beginning of another. You have to do the work. You've got to heal. You've got to go through the lessons and do some real self-analysis about what went down and what happened, and take ownership. And because you're just going to lay that stuff at your new partner's feet. And exactly, they're going to now feel that on top of trying to navigate a new relationship, when it in itself is hard work, you now have the burden of having to manage the unresolved trauma of the previous relationship. And now as the man, you've got to try and be better than the evil ex. Or as the woman, you've got to try and be better than the evil ex. So you're already now in competition with the exes before your relationships even had a time to blossom and nurture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so unhealthy to just, leapfrog from one relationship to the next.
Right. So unhealthy, everyone.
Don't do it.
Don't. And right, you've said most often these relationships fall apart, or the rescuer savior goes from one broken wing to another.
Yeah.
I mean, what if they live unhappily ever after? Right? I have friends who I would argue have married their savior.
Yeah.
What happens to that dynamic long term if they do try to stay together?
There's nothing's going to change. There's definitely not going to be any growth. There's no evolution in a relationship like that. You can easily predict what every month of your life is going to look like for the rest of your relationship, what all the conversations are going to sound like, what sex is going to be like. It's just predictable. It becomes totally predictable if if you're not willing to have the conversations and address that stuff. And then in the predictability comes deep resentment. And when that resentment arrives, you now start nitpicking about the tiniest things because you're not speaking your truth. You're not being honest about the big stuff that's not working for you. So you start making it about the small stuff that's irritating you. Like who left the toilet seat up and who didn't put the toothpaste lid back on and who didn't put their laundry in the hamper. And really, I'm sure you've seen this too, of relationships brought to their knees by the seemingly small stuff because they just weren't confronting the big stuff. So that resentment turns into nitpicking, which just starts to erode that psychological connection. So you become lonely. You're going to become lonely inside this relationship. And there's no worse loneliness in the world than being lonely in a relationship.
Right.
And it's especially lethal if children are involved because, you're modeling what relationship looks like for your kids. And if this is what they are learning about relationship, about communication, about intimacy from watching you two, it's just going to be another cycle that is going to continue in the next generation and the next generation. So it's dangerous in how the behavior can carry on especially if children are involved. But I think there's just going to be a total disconnect of the self, resentment, loneliness, and just a feeling of what's the point, but it's the payoff, like we were saying, I was saying earlier, it's like it's better to have this than nothing. A lot of people justify it. I know that he does this, I know that I do this, but it's better than being single again. Wouldn't want that. So people justify the bad behavior and there they stay year after year.
Right. And model staying, right, and communicating, conveying to children, it's better to be with someone than alone. So then those same children will be with someone rather alone.
And I'll just sacrifice my deep feelings that something's not okay. I will learn that feelings of discomfort can be suppressed, don't need to be addressed. I will learn to deal with those feelings by overeating or drinking or taking drugs or having casual sex or gambling or, name your poison. But it's coping mechanism. Addiction is coping mechanism. And for a lot of these relationships that won't shift out of that place, this is what ends up happening with one or both partners, is some addictive behavior starts creeping into their lives. Because where's that emotion going? What do you do with that frustration and that loneliness and that disconnect? You don't just get on with your day as if that stuff isn't affecting you. So you're going to start acting out somewhere. But as long as we're together. And my worst is when people justify it for the sake of the children. We're going to stay together for the sake of the kids. please don't.
Mm.
Because the deeper programming your children are engaging in by observing this means that they are going to create these toxic relationships for themselves later on and struggle to find healthy ways.
Right.
It's this myth of having to stay together for the kids. Most children who have come from those homes have said to me, I wish they'd gotten divorced 10 years ago. I wish my parents had just left each other, because living in that state with that unbearable energy in the house was awful every single day. I just would rather they had gone their separate ways and things would have been easier. So just a lot of stuff implodes when we're unwilling to face the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining being one of these children, and I sense that unconsciously, if I'm looking at my mom who's a victim and my dad starts to be resentful towards her, I might be like, yeah, she is pathetic. Why doesn't she get her shit together? Oh God, she's so like, she doesn't work. And then, but if she expresses resentment towards him, I might be like, Dad, let me do it on my own. Like, stop dictating everything I do. I don't need you to bail me out this time. So, right, this child most likely will repeat either role in their relationships. But yeah, they're stuck in the middle between the judgment, resentment of either two, and nothing gets resolved.
And learning, as you would say, you are being raised to put the needs of others above your own. You have this complete idea that you are being reinforced to stay small, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you don't like the situation, just stay small, don't take up too much space, don't make a scene, don't create drama. There's no need for any of that.
Right.
And then you're rewarded for that sacrifice. You're rewarded for dealing, just sucking it up. And you get to think, okay, well, that's something I should seek again. I should seek further reward in that direction. Right. So I'll just keep putting the needs of others above my own, and I'll keep staying small. And you're teaching your kids to avoid confrontation at any cost, and that is so dangerous. And I think people have to also reframe what confrontation means, because people think confrontation means it's an aggressive act.
Right.
It's not. Confrontation simply means to face someone or something. I'm standing in front of and facing you. And you've got to be able to confront people with the truth. And if it's uncomfortable, learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You can't have, no discomfort, because discomfort is really the sign that powerful growth is happening. Powerful shift is starting.
Right.
People who tell me they want a comfortable life, I want to slap them and go, no comfort here. Because that is a one-way ticket to paralysis. Be comfortable, stay small, make yourself invisible, put up with unacceptable behavior, let your boundaries be violated again. But hey, as long as everyone's comfortable. So that should never be an aim for me in relationship, as being comfortable ever. No. Because how are you going to sustain a 20, 30, 40-year relationship being comfortable? And that's what happens in these codependent relationships, this broken wing syndrome, is that you just get comfortable in the dynamic and the roles that you play, and nothing changes. No. So being uncomfortable is good. It's good. It's healthy.
We're advocating for discomfort, everyone.
Yes. Yes. Because when you are uncomfortable and you can't keep reverting to the same behaviors that have gotten you here, it means you have to learn new behaviors to get you there. And the discovery of those new behaviors, new aspects of yourself, doing powerful internal work is unbelievably liberating. When you discover what you're really made of. But when you're comfortable, you're not going to start that journey, because you just justify to yourself, well, everything's fine. I don't need to see someone. I don't need to work with a therapist or a coach. I'm okay. Are you really?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, working on yourself is not a pleasure. It's not easy, that's for sure, and it can be scary, but moving through that dark night of the soul stuff, you will come out of the other side unrecognizable to yourself.
Right.
And it is worth every moment of discomfort.
I know sometimes with my patients, I'll talk about how you have to choose what type of discomfort you want, because eventually codependency, you're going to be very uncomfortable. We've had people come on, and I've talked about it too. You just really contort yourself to fit in these very uncomfortable poses. So it's eventually it is uncomfortable. And so is healing. So is setting boundaries. So is being alone, right? Without a savior, or you being the victim. That's uncomfortable. But it's just, you have to bargain and be like, do I want this one or that one? This discomfort or that? So I sense here we're choosing the discomfort of growth, of healing, of being okay, being alone. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I don't know where this thing of being alone, comes from. Well, I do, it comes from that, very Victorian thing of being the spinster, and you're on the shelf because nobody proposed to you and nobody will ever want you. And you've brought shame to the family and you're a disgrace and you're not going to breed and have grandchildren. And there goes our family name. And, it's that whole guilt from that generation.
Mm-hmm.
So I know where this fear of, if you're alone, you failed, but it's such rubbish. There's such power in being alone. And with all of the structures we are seeing shift and break and collapse around society at the moment, this has to be one of them, is the idea that you are only successful and you are only happy when you get into a relationship, if you have a relationship. And then you meet someone and it becomes that whole, oh, when are you getting engaged? And then when are you getting married? And now you're married, when are you having your first baby? When are you buying your house? It's just so ridiculously insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the amazing, people who are out there in the world with very powerful social media pages who are just like, I'm so great that I'm not getting married and I'm not having a baby, that I chose a career that really works for me, and it doesn't make the ones who chose marriage and baby any less, or the ones that chose career and singledom any more. It's just a choice of what you want to be doing for your life without needing anyone else's approval to make that okay,
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for a lot of people to kind of say to the previous generation, to their parents, no, that's not my path. It may have been your path, and I know that our family may have done this for the last 5 generations. It's not me, and this is what breaking those generational programs is about, is that it can stop with me today. This does not have to be my story.
Right.
So I love that you said that just now. It's you've got, everything is a choice. Everything in life is a choice, and it's, choose your hard. Being overweight is hard. Dieting is hard. Choose your hard. Being broke is hard. Managing money is hard. Choose your hard.
Right.
Being single is hard. Being in a relationship is hard. Choose your hard. It's there's not one side of that spectrum that's easier than the other side. Both take work. It's just, what is the ultimate result you're wanting for your life and for your relationships?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, being on your own is very empowering, because you don't, that contorting you were saying about just now, so we see it in any relationship. One will ultimately shift a bit of who they are to fit the other one's picture. It's dangerous, and that's where the unhappiness starts.
Right. And with your clients and the listeners who are like, oh God, I am a victim or the savior.
Yes.
What is one of your favorite techniques, activities that you sense can help to start to break that dynamic?
Without a doubt, shadow work.
Mm. What
Shadow
is
work.
shadow work?
So shadow work is looking at all of the stuff that we have suppressed about ourselves, because at some point in our lives we judge those aspects to be wrong or shameful or not acceptable. So when we are born and we start to grow up, we are conditioned by, our family or our caregivers to say, like, parts of us are okay, don't speak like that, don't behave like that, good girls don't do that, good boys don't behave like that, you won't be liked if you do that. We get this kind of culling of our personality by shifting aspects that others deem unacceptable deep down inside us into the shadow, into the dark, where we don't go again. So we learn to become a very, very one-dimensional version of ourselves when we're little, which is aimed at pleasing everybody around us. If people like us, then our position in our tribe is assured, then we're safe. If people don't like some part of us, then our position in the tribe is in jeopardy, and we might get rejected from the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And we as children are totally dependent on that tribe. So we are going to shift everything about us to make everybody else happy, especially our parents. And we will learn how to behave when they're in the room. We learn how to have a particular body language when we are with, the caregivers. And we start to shift, like cutting off a part of ourselves that we start to believe is shameful or unacceptable just because our parents told us it was. And what happens when we start getting older is we realize that this one-dimensional version of ourselves that we have created to be in the world is actually not capable of dealing with all of the life experiences we have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were raised to be very sweet and very polite and a yes girl, and putting the needs of everybody above your own and always help other people, even if it's at the cost of yourself, and you were raised to be that person, when you get older and someone comes to totally take advantage of you or treat you like a doormat or violate a boundary, you have got no coping mechanism for that.
Right.
You're going to smile it away, and you're going to appease the other person, and you're going to sacrifice even more. And you're not going to engage your inner bitch and go, you know what? I'm done. Stop it.
Mm-hmm.
The way you are behaving is totally unacceptable. And if you do that again to me, I'm walking out the room. We won't even engage that tone of voice because we've had it beaten out of us. Not beaten out of us, but you know what I'm saying. We've had it rejected.
Right.
So we start having these problems in relationships at work, with our friends, with our family members, because we do get to an age where we do feel we want to start being more authentic in our communication. We want to start being a bit more honest. We want to start being more than that one-dimensional version of ourselves. We just don't know how. And that's what shadow work is. Shadow work is that internal journeying to unlock all of those aspects that you've kept hidden for so long, and bringing all of them to the surface, and learning to integrate, own, and work with and live with all of them. Because if we look at the broken wing syndrome, that little boy somewhere had one day where maybe he decided he wanted to wear a tutu and dance. And his father was completely freaked out about that and totally ashamed, and smacked his son and said, unacceptable, don't ever do that again. And he learned to shut down that expressive part of himself. And then there was another moment in his life where maybe something bad happened and he burst into tears, and he got another talking to by his father to say, boys don't cry, and man up and handle this. It's not like one event, Marissa. Right. It's like a sequence of events that happen where we slowly start shutting down aspects, where this little boy starts growing up to realize the only way it is acceptable to be a man in the world is to be tough and strong and rescue others.
Right.
So now he meets this woman in his 20s, and she maybe expects him just like that to start undoing this behavior, when this behavior has been in effect for probably, since the age of 5, 6, 7. Mm-hmm. And there are years of layered patterns and programs that have to be worked through and undone.
Right.
And shadow work is a huge part of that. It's a huge part of him reclaiming his expressive self, reclaiming his vulnerable self, so that he can be multifaceted in how he operates in a relationship. And it's the same for her, reclaiming her powerful self, reclaiming her voice so that she can stand in her full power and authenticity in the relationship. Then you have got a really powerful relationship happening.
Mm-hmm.
So shadow work is phenomenal at unlocking the power of who you really are and bringing it to the surface.
Right. Whole, integrated, authentic, right? And for codependence, there are multiple layers of, right, who they show on the outside and their shadow. But yeah, getting in touch with the independent parts of them would be a start. Then we can find some middle ground of interdependency, which we have no or very little concept of.
Mm-hmm. Healthy dependency, where it's a give and a take. It's a support from both directions. It's an upliftment from both sides. It's wanting to see the best of who your partner is, without jealousy or without competition. It's just beyond beautiful to see what happens when couples can do that work on themselves and then bring that into their relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Well, Leah, thank you so much. This was incredible. Thank you. Like, oh my, yeah. We'll have you back to talk about some other aspect. I know you have specialties in different areas of relationships, but until then, what are you giving to the listeners?
So I've got a freebies page on my site, and if you go through there is a free meditation, an open heart meditation for you. There is a video. There's a little video around working with self-sabotage, which is really important. And there's a little workbook for you looking at the biggest common relationship problems and what you can start doing about that. So you can get yourself a meditation, a video, and an ebook. If you go through to my site, which is leahc4.com, and you can find those links on all my social media tabs. So social media is all Leah C4, LEAHSEFOR, and Instagram is leah.c4.
Perfect.
And that's when you can access my work.
All right. Well, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. And truly, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on.
And thank you for this amazing podcast. I think it's such a powerful topic. I'm so glad that you've committed an entire podcast to discussing this, because it impacts everybody. Whether you think you are or aren't, everybody has some codependent relationship in their life. And it's such an important topic to really delve into. So just huge acknowledgement for you and the amazing work that you do in the world. And the difference that you make in people's lives to understand this topic so much more.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Hey, girl. It's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster. I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Marissa. Email me, marissa@codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy, and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.